Quite the talent he is. Proper chatterbox Yada. If you're keen, it'll be brilliant. Today, we're going to keep it simple. I'll bark out a basic command and you watch.
Keen to know? He'll set your tail wagging. Does mine, hence why I'm backing him. Right then, Wookie here. Do take a seat, won't you? Give us your full attention while we listen to my pal Yada.
Well, thank you, Wookie, for the world-class introduction. That is certainly professional of you, and I appreciate it. Just as a quick program note, we are pursuing the basics. This is part of our Luminaries series. It began in the first book of the Torah and Bereshith Genesis with the initial prophecy offered by God, which was that of the greater and lesser luminaries, and we're pursuing that through the prophets to its natural conclusion so that everyone is familiar with who those two individuals are, the Katan Mayor and the Gadol Mayor. These two that are prophetically listed in Bereshith Genesis chapter 1 as the greater and lesser luminaries, and their mission is to serve as signs fulfilling the Moedim. And this would mean that it was Dod who fulfilled the first three, Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim. I'm responsible for the next two, in Shabua and Teruah, and we will celebrate the final two together. They would be Kippurim and Sukkah. This is God's plan. Just as another quick program note before we return to the 31st chapter of Jeremiah, for what is really a startling revelation from God, is that if you go to the yadayah.com website, yadayah.com means to know Yah, and go to the music page is something I would encourage you to do. I noticed this morning that there were two new songs that were posted there. One is called Sing Boldly, which I just think is a masterclass in vocals and lyrics and graphic arts presentation and messaging. It is really something extraordinary. And I would not only encourage you to listen to it and do so multiple times to glean as much of the message as you possibly can and grow from it, but also to share it with others. And then there is also a exceedingly fun reggae presentation of Donald Trump as Satan. And it's called Satan Cosplay. And to use the reggae form and beat to expose Satan in his possession of Donald Trump as POTUS. And the lyrics that follow from there are so spectacular, so clever, so insightful, so pertinent to our time and to what we're witnessing that, oh my, I hope it goes viral, although the quality of something has nothing to do with its viral appeal. The social media platforms are more viruses than opportunity for messages to go viral. All right, with that conveyed, I want to recommence where we were on Friday evening at the end of our family hour, where we, after reading that Yahweh said that he was defining his covenant going forward by the fact that among the covenant's children, he was going to literally write his Torah instructions and guidance inside of us, placing them on our hearts, which is symbolic of them being in a place that guides and instructs, directs our inclinations, our motivations, our thinking and judgment. It is just this magnificent prophecy regarding Yahweh making certain that we know that the foundational text from God to man is the Torah. And that by saying this, of course, it completely negates any credibility for something like the New Testament or the Quran or Talmud or the Zohar. They are just trash based upon this statement. And of course, for Christianity, that's particularly devastating because the only reference to anything that could be even perceived remotely as a endorsement of a new testament or a new covenant would be Yirmiyahu 31. But of course, it's not cited in the Christian New Testament because all you have to do is read it in context and you find that, well, it's directed at Yisrael and Yehudah is going to be the beneficiaries of this renewal, not a Gentile church, and that it's not going to be by compulsion, which destroys the whole concept of religion, not by a strong hand that we're going to be brought into, or humankind will be brought into renewal of the relationship with Yahweh, and that the beneficiaries again are going to be the house of Israel, Israelis, and not again a Christian church. Certainly not Arabs and not Muslims and not Christians and not Haredim either. But it then goes on to say that the newly affirmed covenant relationship is going to be signed, sealed, and delivered with God quite literally writing his Torah instructions inside of his covenant family. And then what follows is, again, almost as profound as each of the three statements that have come heretofore in Yirmiyahu 31. And in it, God says, they will not teach any longer as an individual man to his fellow countrymen or as an individual person to his brother. Now you might say, wait a minute, I thought the whole purpose was, if God's writing his Torah inside of us, is for God to teach us. And teaching is good, right? And we should all learn and we should want to share as teachers. Yeah, not so much. And that's what God is saying here. The fact is that man, assuming that he knows and understands and therefore can properly teach and share the Torah, has gotten us into just innumerable religious binds. And so it is the essence of the Talmud. It's the essence of the Zohar. It's the essence of the Christian New Testament, where man has decided that, well, they'll teach and they will train people on, they will instruct based upon their perceptions of the Torah and of God's message, and they'll come up with their own agenda. God says, no, it didn't work. Individual men, again, have the potential of being good or bad, mostly bad, but at least they have the potential to be good. But collectively, when it's a group of people operating together, they're always bad. And God said, no, we're not going to go down that road again. You had 6,000 years to do that, and it turned out really badly. And so I ended up picking the people that I would authorize to teach. And there are not very many of them. And they're all well identified. So stop just being an individual or one person to another teaching. You ought not be doing it. It's God saying, I have authorized, educated, prepared, and deployed those that I want to teach on my behalf. And one person to another is not the answer. It goes on to say, to approach, say. To draw near, declare. Choose of your own accord to Yahweh. Decide to recognize and acknowledge Yahweh through Yahweh, demonstrating the desire to become familiar with and understand Yahweh, respecting and selecting Yahweh. This was written in the call, which means interpret this literally, genuinely, actually. Don't try to nuances, just be right there. To approach, say, choose of your own volition to Yahweh. That's what a non-nuanced statement that should be interpreted genuinely means. Go where the words lead. It was written in the imperative mood. Now, the imperative mood, you have two options. 98.5% of the time, it means to convey a message under the auspices of volition, interpreted in second person. And 1.5% of the time, it's, as the term suggests, an imperative, which would be a demand or a command or an order of some sort. But when it's written in second person, it is a instruction that is being offered under the auspices of free will. So choose your option. God's saying, this is my advice here. My advice is that you should choose of your own accord, of your own free will. This is something you ought to decide upon. If you want to approach, then choose to Yada Yahweh. Now, there's only one Yada Yahweh in the history of the world. Only one. These books behind me, they're all Yada Yahweh. Here we go. Look at the title. It says Yada Yahweh. This is the only Yada Yahweh series that has ever existed. Yahweh just said, if you want to approach him, then choose to Yada Yahweh. This is how you would do it. You know, behind me, you see an example of, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 of the volumes in this series. There are 35 of them. They're all free at, well, of course, yadayahweh.com or yadayah.com for short. God has said that this will be the way that you approach him going forward. Choose of your own accord to Yada Yahweh. It's quite an endorsement, isn't it? Are you familiar with any other book other than his own Torah and his prophets directly that God has endorsed and said, you should really choose, if you want to approach me, to go to XYZ or not? Then it's or not. This is it. You either Yada Yahweh or you can't approach God. That's what God's saying. I'm not going to have just random teachers, people with their own opinions saying what they want to say. The authorized version of the instruction that I'm conveying to you is in Yada Yahweh. To know Yahweh. That is God's position on this. What you choose to do with it is up to you. But he has said that after he writes his Torah inside of his covenant family, he wants his children to Yada Yahweh, to come to understand God in this way. But there's more to it than this, because the Home for Yahweh's name today, the library that has all of the information pertinent to coming to know who Yahweh is, what he's offering, what he's expecting in return, and everything from his timeline to the people who have contributed to his story and have, well, for example, served as luminaries. They're in those books. They're described in those books. Those books are based upon creating an accurate translation in an amplified format of the oldest manuscripts that are available to us. There is nothing else like them in the history of the world. So there's not only no other series of books or library entitled Yada Yahweh, and that is available at one place, yadayah.com. Yadayah.com, it's all there. Every book, every vlog, every music production, every invitation, every translation, every commentary on the news to show how it's literally in the grip of current prophecy. It's all there. in addition to a way that we can communicate with one another as family. This is the house for Yahweh's name. It is Yahweh's library going forward throughout the next 1,000 years. Um, it means, of course, that I will have an opportunity perhaps to even improve them from the way they are over this working vacation that we'll engage in here after the Shabua harvest. And perhaps not. Perhaps God's saying, no, I don't want you to rewrite them anymore. I want you to continue to add to them. Because if you rewrite them, then it's impossible for somebody to begin anywhere close to where you began. It's already, you've rewritten some of these 8, 10, 12 times. Every time you learn something new or additional or refine an insight, you go back in and edit that into the finished product. And, a year ago, God said, I want you to stop doing that. And I think that the reason is twofold. One is, if we continue to do that at the pace that we're learning, we would never get anything accomplished, because by the time you were finishing editing one of the 35 volumes, you'd have to go back and re-edit that one based upon the things that we're learning. And you'd never get to the end before you'd have to edit them all over again, at which point you'd have no time for learning anything new, and that wouldn't be productive. But second, it's consistent with everything that God's trying to convey to us. He's not looking for perfect. He's looking for proven. He wants us all to be observant, to be thoughtful, to be responsive, to be steadfast in our contribution, and to show that when mistakes are made, we can learn from them, that we can grow over time based upon additional insights and knowledge and understanding. And that these flaws, if you will, in this perfect jewel actually contribute to the process. God didn't deliver Adam perfect. If Adam was perfect, he would have listened to God. He would have been thoughtful. He would have been responsive. And he would not have disregarded God's instructions. And even if he had for a moment, he would have corrected what he had done. He wasn't any of those things, which means that since God created him that way, that wasn't God's intent. God's intent with him was to create someone who would learn, who would listen, who would be observant, and as a result of these things would process that information intelligently, respond appropriately, contribute to the relationship, and yes, occasionally make mistakes, but learn from them. Occasionally trip and fall, but get back up stronger and more confident, more resilient as a result. So the very fact that the books, these 35 books, if you're to begin at the beginning, have things in them that, well, I wouldn't state it that way now. It was still more than enough to get you from where you may be in this world to a relationship with Yahweh and into his covenant family. But we are so far beyond where we were a year, 2, 5, 10 years ago, that if we were to go back and update every volume for what we know now, there'd be no place to start for anyone. There'd be no place to begin. If I were to tell you, who Adam really was and is, and who Chinook was and is, and who Noach and Shem were and are. If I were to tell you that and begin with it and explain why that's the way it needs to be, well, God has an Amma, a woman that he views as the ideal mother. And we can identify her. But again, if I started there, if I started with all the nuances that we've come to know about Dode, both the good and the bad, and why they both exist. Then the opening volumes would be way beyond the processing capability for someone that doesn't have that base of knowledge. It would be like taking someone in romper room and saying that you want to teach them how to do open heart surgery. Well, you can get them there if they go from romper room through kindergarten and then through grammar school, intermediate school, high school, college, and then earn a postgraduate education and have a fellowship. You can get them from here to there, but they're going to spend decades in the process and devote themselves to learning, beginning with Dick and Jane and one fish, two fish, goldfish, bluefish, redfish, bluefish, whatever the fishes are. And that's the way it has to be. So the fact of the matter is, by the time that you're into what I'm writing now, which is Coming Home 4 and 5, you're going to be at a different plane. I mean, it's like, again, going from the child in romper room in kindergarten and then being somebody who is working on their postdoc after having written an acclaimed dissertation, or at least having read one, and then being a postdoc candidate. That's the difference in where we are. And it is exactly where God wants us to be. And so the other part of this is God has never, and he is never going to sidestep people. Ever. God made a commitment that he would work with us and through us, not over us, not in any way that is so consistent with religious gods. With religious gods, they all engage directly in human affairs. I'm going to set my friend down. There we go. They all do it. You look at all the pagan myths, gods were constantly interacting with men. Now, of course, it was all lies, but that's how a human manufactured God performs. You look at the Christian God. Oh, he's a man, for crying out loud. In fact, he's so manly as a man, men can kill him. And he's so devoted to playing it all out in human form that said man God, after being killed, is bodily resurrected. It's in your face, God, the religious God, engaging with humankind, except for the fact, of course, this one didn't write a single word, didn't tell anybody to write a single word down, had nothing said about him within the first 4 decades of his non-existence, and he actually didn't ever exist. Allah is the same thing. Allah is terrorizing, destroying, screaming, doing all manner of things. It's not the real God, the only God. The only God decided, I'm going to do all of this through people. And if you might say, I don't want God to do that. I don't want to get information from God about somebody wearing a fancy colored shirt, sitting, barefoot with the ocean in the background. I want my God to deliver the message directly to me. I want my God to just speak directly to me. I don't want that guy in the funky shirt to be doing that. I've pretty much read everything God has to say and studied it, translated it from the oldest sources. I never recall one place where God asked for man's opinion in that regard. So he doesn't really want to hear what you have to say. This is what he's chosen to do. He's pretty smart. And this is the plan he is going to continue to use. He is not going to change it. In fact, just to show you he was right, when he came down to speak to the children of Israel after saving their tukuses from Mitzrayim and performing all manner of miracles to get them from slaves to being liberated and en route to the promised land, he came down off of Mount Choreb, in the sense that the energy he was projecting and the voice he was projecting came off Mount Choreb, gave the children of Israel 3 days to get their minds ready for this, to get all cleaned up so they didn't feel so embarrassed in God's presence. And he came down and said, I'm Yahweh. I'm here to affirm to you that I'm the one who is inspiring Moshe in this regard. And they, whoa, stop it. Go away. Shut up. We never want to see you or hear from you again. You scare us to death. No more of that booming voice. I said, yeah. Okay, that's fine. I get it. That's what I wanted to do anyway. Just thought you ought to have a say in the matter. You've made your point clear, and that's the way we're going to do it. So I won't ever speak to you directly again. There you go. What he did is he chose men. And all of the men that he chose, and a few women, by the way, also, were all imperfect, because that's the only way this works. God has to show that he can find men who will listen to him, who will think about what he has to say, who will respond appropriately, who will engage, making a contribution, and who can be trusted to see the job through, who will learn in the process. That's what he needs to demonstrate. Otherwise, the entire human experience is for naught. You can throw away the Nasama man experiment, because God can't take us off this planet and do anything with us throughout the universe he created unless he knows that we will listen, think, respond, and prove reliable. So this is why God's going to communicate going forward with humanity through the analysis of his Torah and prophets, as inspired by the seven spirits of Yahweh, through Yada Yahweh. It's going to be Yada who will continue to read and analyze and compute, learn from, draw insights out of Yahweh's Torah, and then convey the pertinent aspects of what God has said to his people for their benefit. That's the way it's going to be. That's the way it is. And again, you can complain all you want that you think God ought to have been able to find somebody better if this was what he was going to do, but evidently there wasn't anybody better. In fact, who are you to say who God should choose? So to approach, say, choose of your own volition to Yada Yahweh. Stop trying to teach yourself. Yada Yahweh. That is how we are going to go forward in terms of teaching. For indeed, every one of them will come to know me, being like Yada with me. Everyone, without exception, they will actually continually be aware of and acknowledge me, as Yada has, as a result of their katan. It's a title, their katan, who is the ad. He is the restoring witness to the eternal testimony of their Gadol. Prophetically reveals in advance of it occurring Yahweh. So who was that fellow that wrote those books called Yada Yahweh? Who was the person that was the first to reintroduce the proper pronunciation of Yahweh's name after 2,500 years of it being spoken? Who was the person that realized the identity of the Katan and Gadol Mayor? Who was the person that bringing you this series devoted to having you appreciate the identity of and the purpose of God's prophecy regarding the Katan and Gadol Mayor? For indeed, every one of them will know me, being like Yada with me, as a result of the Khatan. Khatan is actually the younger of the two Mayor that are presented in the first book of the Torah that serve to explain and fulfill the Moedim, the Khatan. You can call him lesser. Yeah. You can call him younger. Whichever you prefer. Less significant, less influential, certainly than the Gadol Mayor. Gadol Mayor, for crying out loud, is the firstborn son of God. He's our Savior. But the Khatan, he is an ad. He is a restoring witness to the eternal testimony. And the thing that he has done that no one heretofore has done is to recognize who the Gadol, the greater luminary, is and what he achieved, and why it's essential that we establish a understanding and appreciation for Dod, the king, because he returned in 33 CE, year 4000 Yah, to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim, opening the doorway to life, removing our guilt, taking it into Sheol, never to be seen again, and enabling our adoption into God's family during firstborn children as God's firstborn. That same fellow, that restoring witness, the guy that wrote the books called Yada Yahweh, that one referred to as the Khatan, he is the first ever to demonstrably state that Dod returned after being king of Yisrael, our Messiah, the firstborn son of God, the chosen one, to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. And that he wrote in first person of exactly how he would fulfill Pesach and Matzah, as well as Bakurim, what he would endure. Crucifixion, actually, is what he described. 1,000 years before he endured it, 500 years before it existed, 600 years or 400 years to be certainly, maybe 500 before Rome even existed, that he described it in first person, the 22nd Mizmor. And then, as Gabriel through Daniel, he told us exactly the date, to the precise day, some 600 years in advance of when he would fulfill Chag Matzah. Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim are all part of Chag Matzah. He gave the last day of Chag Matzah in 33 CE, year 4000 Yah, making Dod our Savior, enabling the benefits of the covenant. That same fellow that wrote Yada Yahweh was the first to ascertain that, prove it, and share it. You see the prophecies coming together, and God specifically saying that to Yada Yahweh is how you're going to approach, that Yada Yahweh is the testimony of the Khatan, the younger of the luminaries, regarding the Gadol, the greater and older of the luminaries. I mean, it's as profound as it gets, ladies and gentlemen. And you can scream and holler and say, I don't want to believe it. I don't want to believe that a man who can make mistakes is the authorized spokesperson for God. But according to God, it's true. You don't have to agree with him, but by the same token, you don't have to live with him either. And if you do, if you want to approach him, he's told you. Stop teaching on your own merits, our own ideas. Start reading and listening to Yada Yahweh, particularly as the Khatan, the younger luminary, as a restoring witness, identifies the role of the Gadol, Mayor. I should be able to say, I don't need 1,000 hours of vlogs. Don't need 25,000 pages of translations and insights. that alone in Jeremiah 31, this is the 34th statement, is enough. If you need more, I'm not sure God's open to even giving it to you. He was declarative. This is the restoration of the covenant. Take it or leave it. This is the way to approach him. Your decision. So when we set this into the midst of the single most declarative statement regarding the final restoration of the covenant with Yahweh in year 6000 Yah, this prophetic pronouncement becomes the preeminent summation of Yahweh's plans. It's the ultimate affirmation of God's chosen implements. The Gadol Mayor is king, and the Katan Mayor is teacher. And this will be the ongoing condition experienced by all who are fortunate enough to be among the surviving remnant of the chosen people or harvested as members of the covenant family. There will be no religious alternatives, no political infighting, no spurious claims of authority, no ongoing or prolonged disagreements. There are going to be no sects, no cults, no parties, political or otherwise, no false prophets, no misleading teachers, and no contrary interpretations or antagonism. God will be known by one name, Yahweh. He will have incorporated his guidance through the Torah. His prescriptions for living, well, they're going to be found in the midst of Yada Yahweh. Well, I'm hoping I can find a way to, there we go. I think that'll work. There we go. To continue to move. I'm trying to, as you can see here, I'm surrounded by all sorts of gear, but that box that is right there with the Canon, I think it's an R8 behind it, that is officially what's known as a teleprompter. And the purpose of it is to provide my translations so that when I share them with you, they benefit from the 25 years of analysis and research and dedication that I have invested in these things. That I'm not sharing with you a standard translation promoted by a religious publisher. I've done the work so that when I quote something to you, it has been derived from the oldest extant text, typically the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's been scrubbed of all religious malfeasance. The diacritical markings have been removed, so we go to the core message of the letters themselves, and that every word is analyzed from the perspective of its verbal root, and then presented in a manner that's consistent with Yahweh's overall nature. And then after translating a text, I will share with you various interpretations if they're available, but most importantly, I'll draw conclusions that help you go from now knowing this information to understanding it. Obviously, it is a way that God is very comfortable with teaching his people, and that is why he has endorsed it. So all of this will be delivered by a single witness going forward in collaboration with God. And that witness will be the one who has restored Yahweh's name, who has reinforced the preeminence of his Torah teaching, correctly conveying the inscribed conditions of the covenant, delineating all 5 of them, which, again, I was the first to do, establishing how the benefits are delivered by Dod's fulfillment of the first 3 Moed Mikra in the spring of 33 CE, year 4000 Yah, such that we reestablish our respect for our king since, well, he is returning. And we reunite Israel. This individual, as the Katan Mayor, will do so throughout the Moedim. At times, he is a father to the Gadol Mayor, sometimes a grandson and a great-great-great-grandson other times a co-worker and collaborator, sometimes a beneficiary. He is all those things, including at times his herald, all focused on his support and admiration for the Gadol Mayor. So true to his word and nature, Yahweh will accomplish all of this through his chosen implements. And now, as a proud father and a delighted God, he can say, yep, I was right. I have been proven correct. Humans were worth the effort. Man was capable of being observant, responsive, and reliable. Yeah, not many of them, but enough to have a family, enough to go off and explore the universe together. So Jews will no longer be teaching Jews because they will be listening to Yada. The Talmud will no longer exist because, well, Yada Yahweh will serve as the means to comprehend and apply the Torah's guidance. Hashem will be abandoned for the Shem of our God, Yahweh. This is the resolution of the 3 instructions that Yahweh engraved on the first tablet. Yahweh will have liberated his people from all forms of oppression and from false gods. There will be no trace of religion, and fathers will no longer corrupt their sons with false teaching. Thousands will receive Yahweh's mercy, and they will bask in his love by accepting his prescriptions for living. And as a result of his Torah, and of course augmented by the insights derived in Yada Yahweh, God's name will no longer be hidden, erased, forgotten, or disparaged. Now, over the past year, I have transitioned in my approach and thinking, as I have shared so many times recently with you. I am no longer devoted full time to adding other books to the Yada Yahweh library at yada.com. Although I'm currently writing, I don't know if it'll turn out to be 2 or 3 volumes of Coming Home simultaneously, but I'm doing them for this program. In fact, the Luminary series is derived from them. I think I posted the first 2 chapters of it on the books topic on chat at yadaya.com, and I'll post another 2 today, and we'll continue to go through that book, as there's many, many chapters that have been written for your edification. But I do it now so that our learning stays fresh and current, so that we capitalize on all that we have been able to glean from the Torah and prophets and Psalms thus far, and catapult into new levels of understanding. Something that is essential for the covenant family to grow. And my focus now is on the covenant family and equipping members of the covenant who have been together with me for 10, 15, 20 years to prepare for the responsibility that's coming. And so this is why we do what we do. And we're now using the Yahweh blog as the means, not so much to recruit covenant members anymore as we are to equip them. There is just not enough time remaining for a newbie to learn what must be known to mature and grow into effective and responsible children of the covenant, to the extent that they can prove themselves trustworthy and that God can emancipate from this planet. And that's why when we're dealing with the remaining and returning remnant of Israel 7 years from now, that we'll have 1,000 years to work with them and to equip them and prepare them so that they are among those who can be emancipated and enriched, enlightened, empowered, and enabled going forward. 1,000 years is a long time, and it's going to take a long time to get a significant number of mankind up to speed. But even then, keep in mind, it's going to be in the hundreds or thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. But the idea of it being millions is not going to happen. And God doesn't want it to happen that way. So God's message isn't suitable for social media platforms. They're all toxic, and we just don't want to sully the word of our God in such places. And that's why we've built a home now at the Home for Yahweh's Name, yadayah.com. Now, I've determined and shared that our purpose at this point in time is to build a worldwide home for Yahweh's name and for his covenant family, and that resides at yadayah.com. I think the site is magnificent. It is rich. It is deep. And it's not only a site that is aesthetically beautiful, as it has been styled by my favorite and most beautiful stylist, my beloved wife, who, well, we've been together for 6,000 years, so it's not surprising that we work very well together. But it's not just beautiful. And it's not just very technically astute, where it outperforms Facebook at being Facebook, outperforms X at being X, outperforms YouTube at being YouTube. It outperforms most communication platforms in terms of instant messaging. It is all of those things. It is a news site, and it is a vlog video presentation site. It is a instant messaging site, and it is a site that presents spectacular music. It is a site that not only presents all of these books, a full library, which is its primary purpose, but also where the library can be searched, and the Dead Sea Scrolls that form the basis of it are all available for you to study, and where multiple translations of the same passages are all brought to your attention. If you only want to read the translations for any particular book or any chapter of any book, they're all there for you. So it's not just that it's technically astute, so that you can replicate the experience of instant messaging and of social media news posts and of video long form presentations without having to be in those swamps, which is essentially rebuilt the benefit of Facebook and of YouTube and of X to offer it all without the anti-Semitic swamp. But beyond the beauty and the technical prowess, there's something else that is even more powerful about yadayah.com. And that happens to be the content. There's no one else in the history of the world that has written 35 books on God as I have, 25,000 pages of amplified translations and commentary on those translations from the oldest sources, in our case, the Dead Sea Scrolls. No one else has ever done that. No one else has ever created 1,000 hours of vlogs on the subject of God as we have. No one else has written 5 volumes to completely destroy the myths of Christianity and 5 more to destroy the caustic nature of Islam, or 3 more to destroy rabbinic Judaism, so that the religions are cleared out of the way as obstacles so that you can actually process what God has to say about himself. There's no other place like this, no other series of books that are written on proprietary, amplified, very unique translations from the oldest extant sources. And so it's the content that makes it so rich. That's why Yahweh has called it out by name, saying, you want to approach, go to Yahweh. So we are here now to prepare the covenant family for the Shabua harvest and what follows during the time of trouble, culminating on Teruah in preparation for Kippurim, so that we're effective teachers Sukkah. Of course, the problem with the Jews has been that the wrong people have been teaching the wrong material for a very long time. The yeshiva is case in point. Rabbis feel somehow emboldened to copy edit God, and they feed the Haredi out of their Talmud and train them to be useless, antagonistic parasites, constantly irritating God. Therefore, having learned nothing of value over the past 3,500 years, a time of Jews teaching Jews is over. Now, those who have been afforded the opportunity to approach God at this time, and especially those gathered by Yahweh on Teruah ultimately for Kippurim, so they can witness the return of Father and Son, that they will all have chosen to Yada Yahweh. This is now the charter for the returning remnant of Yisrael. It is their library. It's their home. And a time is soon to come, just 7 years from this program, when everyone who survives will come to recognize, acknowledge, and appreciate Yahweh by name. There will be no exceptions. And 4 pronouncements, Yirmiyah, known to many as Jeremiah, in the 31st chapter, 31st through 34th verses. That's a nasty looking yellow jacket if I've ever seen one. Yahweh has disclosed where we're headed, how we're going to get there, and what will transpire when we are one again. He has brought us full circle back to the garden with his Gadol Meor as the tree of lives and the Katan Meor as the tree of knowledge. The Choder will have served his purpose. The king will be restored to prominence. Yahweh is smiling. And I want people to have an appreciation for how significant that is. It's not just that we found God endorsing Yahweh. It's not just that God has said, I'm going to write my Torah inside of my people. He is not just saying that this is going to be the result of the Katan, the younger of the 2 luminaries, speaking as a restoring witness on behalf of the greater and older of the 2 luminaries. It's so much more than that, because right from the beginning, God establishes that the greater luminary is the tree of lives, and the younger luminary is the tree of knowledge. And then God says, in one of the most profoundly important prophecies in the 11th chapter of Yeshayah, that the Choder will be the only man in human history to be inspired by the 7 spirits of Yahweh, including the very spirit of Yahweh, and that amongst his spiritual gifts is going to be that he is the Etza Dayath. The Etz Dayath is the tree of knowledge. The Etza Dayath means that he is the comprehensive presentation, framing the entire portrait of knowledge from beginning to end, based upon what can be known and understood about God and about man. He is the entirety of it. The Choder is the tree of knowledge. That's why his library is called Yada Yahweh. The whole thing ties together. It's one cohesive story. So in a particularly relevant disclosure, this will be as a result of the Katan serving as a restoring witness to the Gadol. This is because Yahweh wants to bring some humans back to where we began in the midst of his creation account. Therefore, even prior to his narrative on the garden, Yahweh explained what he's going to do to achieve the desired result through his Katan Meor and Gadol Meor. And so now upon our return to the garden, which will happen in 7 years, we find God himself touting yada yada, on behalf of the returnees. So Yahweh's plan is set in stone. It's etched in the limbs of the tree. It's not going to change. So now that you know what's going to happen, with whom, why it will occur, I trust that you will be among the celebrants. I look forward to seeing you on Shabuah or thereafter en route to Teruah. Well, this then brings us to the references of the sun and the moon that drew me back to this passage in Jeremiah 31. And I suspect that you're going to be surprised by what Yahweh has to say about them. It reads, "Here and now, Yahweh says, I have provided the brilliance of the sun to approach the light in the day." This is right after acknowledging the Gadol Mayor as the greater luminary. It says, Yahweh says, I have provided the brilliance of the sun to approach the light in the day. And of course, you know that the whole message of the greater luminary is that it's symbolic of the sun, whose light is reflected by the moon during the night. And that God has much to say about how the sun and the moon work together throughout time, and particularly during the last days. And Yahweh says numerous times, but most adroitly in the 89th Mizmor, that it's Dod who is returning as brilliant as the sun. So here and now, Yahweh says, I have provided the brilliance of the sun to approach the light in the day, sharing the engraved inscriptions of the conditions to be cut into the relationship, chukah, by the moon and by the heavenly powers to provide the light during the night. See, the sun does not work independently from God's point of view. The metaphor of the sun and the moon, they are integrated. They are a collective whole. They seldom, if ever, operate independent of one another. They're always there, with the younger luminary supporting the older one. And that is the way it is even here, because the one that is sharing the engraved inscriptions of the conditions that cut you into the covenant relationship is the moon, so that you might appreciate the sun's relevance and bask in the sun's brilliance, even during these dark times preceding the return of the light. So God says, I am stirring up and bringing repose. I am a disturbing and yet pacifying, agitating and yet rousing, all of this by way of the sea. God doesn't want us to, by repose, he doesn't want us to be complacent. He wants us to be stirred up. He's not just trying to pacify, but be a bit agitating as well. And the one that is symbolic of agitating, particularly those in the land, symbolic of Yisrael, is the one who comes out of the sea, symbolic of this lone goy known as the Nakar, the observant foreigner. The seas, waves roar against the shore, and they can contribute to turning hardened rocks into softer sand, which makes, of course, Israel more willing to actually listen to Yahweh and act accordingly when they've been so hard and impervious to his message previously. But, it also erodes that which shouldn't be there. It has an amazing effect on the shore. And so God says, I'm stirring up and I'm bringing repose by the sea, so that his waves roar while abundantly enriching the multitude. We need these waves for us to be, to have the land receptive. So Yahweh of the vast array of spiritual implements is his name. Something that is only conveyed accurately in the books that I have written, because every place else, every paid biblical Bible, if you will, Babel translation, is not a translation; it's a replacement. It says, "The Lord God of the heavenly host is His name." But Lord and God are both titles, and the text actually read Yahweh is His name. So you're going to rely on those who have lied to you, or are you going to rely on the one who's told you the truth, who God is specifically endorsing? Well, I think we have our first completely blurred background. Maybe the focus is, there we go, is trying to zoom in and figure out what's going on. I do appreciate having all of these lovely backgrounds as we do this show. I think it is first a way of sharing that, yes, we are the one coming from the sea, just as God had foretold. And it also shows that there is beauty still left in this world. And we want to share it with you. This is our home, and we want to invite you to it. But it also affirms that with the palm fronds blowing and the changing light, that this is a live stream, and I think there's a credibility that goes along with that. So the here and now in this statement is a reference to the last days, prior to our return to the garden. Then we are in a position where God is saying, I'm inviting you back. Therefore, we are literally being instructed that God's going to restore the earth to the conditions of Eden, and that the mortal remnant will be allowed back in. Here we are. And the greater and lesser luminaries, the Gadol and Mayor, are going to be there hand in hand, teaching, guiding, enlivening. So God's Son, representing the Son, has revealed the way to enter the light of God, doing so as the sun shines upon us at this new wonderful opportunity. Of course, the moon, representing the lesser or younger luminary, is still hard at work, trying to do his best to reflect the sun's brilliance, adding to this library for Yahweh, and sharing the inscribed prescriptions which serve as the conditions to be cut into the covenant relationship. He continues to serve as a source of light, now eliminating the darkness. So perhaps you notice the juxtaposition of the Katan and Gadol in the previous prophetic pronouncement regarding the upcoming celebrations on Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukkah in year 6000 Yah, with the sun and the moon here. The imminent proximity and context serves to validate the conclusion that they were used as titles representing the two Mayor luminaries of Barishith, Genesis 1, and the fourth day. And this recognition becomes vital to Yisrael's survival, because as the text pronounces in our next statement from God, if either of them, mush, fail, stop working, or withdraw, God says it's over. He's all in with these two guys. And if they say, I don't want to do it anymore, the work's too hard, you need to find somebody else, I'm out, and it's over for everybody. There's no approaching God. There's no remnant even. There's no fulfillment of the next 4 Moedim. God's not returning. If I were to shirk my responsibility, I'm here to tell you, I'm not going to. But before we get there, we discover that the moon, with the support of the higher powers, is being stirred up by Yahweh. the man who emerges from the sea, as you see behind me, and from the west as a goy, as the Nakri, as this observant foreigner, is going to disturb and pacify, agitate and rouse, such that his waves roar upon the shore. He will be abundantly enriching while remaining as a source of wave upon wave, both loud and boisterous. And for this, we can rely on Yahweh. And in this way, God is reminding us of the ongoing collaboration between these two luminaries. He is affirming that they will direct humankind's attention to the light. And this reinforces some of the many ways Yahweh intends to deploy his chosen, tested, and re-engaged souls. Now, in this case, the man of the sea will be agitating and calming depending on the situation. He will roar at some and enrich others, even during the millennial celebration of Sukkah and our return to the garden. Evidently, there will be those who still need to be stirred up and roused, and others who will require a little calming down and reassuring. And Yah is going to be here to provide both at Yahweh's discretion, of course, and that the intent is made abundantly clear that he is to enrich this remnant with the very light of Father and Son. So according to God, the fate of the planet is still on the line. Should either the Gadol Meor or the Katan Meor fail, should either give up as Moshe and Dod have done in previous lives, should they yield to the grating and belligerence, this annoying ignorance of the vocal advocates of political, religious, and conspiratorial jargon? Or should they be withdrawn by God? Israel will cease to exist. And without Yahweh, there will be no homecoming on Kippurim. This would leave the planet under the unabated influence of mankind and Satan, resulting in its destruction and the end of life. Now, I have long known that Yahweh is counting on us. He wants us to complete our mission, and we will. But I also realize that there is no plan B, not at this time. I'm not sure there has ever been. And I, of course, sense the pressure. I recognize and accept the responsibility, and I'm keenly aware of the urgency and the necessity to do as Yahweh requests. But I also know that Yahweh has supplied a team that makes it possible. Today I looked at the invites, which I'm so excited to share because they do such a marvelous way of drawing you into this library. And that's literally what they're there to do, is to bring you from being distracted into the world, to pique your interest, to draw you into this library. And, I posted a bunch of them last night and again this morning, and they just did. But yet we had two men that noticed the message that I wrote to them this morning about, we got them posted and they came up, but they didn't play as they're supposed to play. And that's a complex thing to do. And they were right on it. And now they work. I was concerned over the end of last week that the music videos that have been produced, mostly by my wife, and then augmented by the graphic team, the music team that she has assembled and that work so diligently and devoted so much of their time and talents to, had produced upwards of 80 music videos. That message and the graphic presentation better than any vlog I have ever done. And we just weren't getting them up on our site at the level I wanted. And well, now we are. I shared with you there's two that in particular among the 80, but there's scores of them that are magnificent. They're a balm for your soul. They're inspiration to carry on. They're uplifting. They're cutting. They're agitating. They're all of these things. And, I know that we have a team that makes it happen. And it's really reassuring and comforting that God has put a team in place so that we will see this through. So we're going to demonstrate that our God was right to conceive humankind in the first place, to choose to associate with us, to teach us, to guide us, to deploy us, and even trust us. I think he's seen that he was right about us. And while we may seem as otherwise ordinary people put into extraordinary circumstances, the expectation is that we will prevail. We must perform, resolving the most threatening challenge to Yahweh's people and plan at this time. The time of Jacob's troubles is 3 weeks away. There's no backing down now. So we are often mentioned, but seldom heralded. We are also few, as I'm aware of only 4 others that have been redeployed by God. Dode 7 times, Eliah 3, Moshe 3, Yahweh's Amma, my wife, Leah 8. And this known, the Gadol Meor, is the central character of God's story. So our lives revolve around Dode. We live to support him. And by supporting him, we contribute to all of us. So this warning is presented under the banner of choke. The inscribed decrees from Yahweh presented throughout the Torah, which serve as prescriptions for living, that literally cut us into the relationship. It is through these engraved remedies to treat what ails humanity that participation in the covenant is possible, making them the means to inherit all God has to share with his children. So while this assessment applies to both Meor, in the previous statement, Yahweh associated the communication of his choke with the moon. If this specific inscribed decree, these clearly communicated prescriptions of what must be accomplished, ha-choke, ha-ele, fail, with them ceasing at any time, losing touch or departing, should they yield, should they stop, should they be withdrawn for any ongoing period, before my appearance or out of my presence, prophetically declares Yahweh, then surely also the descendants of Israel will come to an end. They will no longer exist as a people or as a nation to approach my presence for the whole of time. Yirmiyah, Yah lifts up Jeremiah 31:36. Folks, that's almost insanely insightful. God is saying, I have a plan. My plan is being manifest through the Katan and Gadol Meor, represented by the moon and the sun. They serve as my witnesses. Their story is told in Yada Yahweh. You want to approach me, you need to read it and understand their dedication to literally embodying my Torah and my purpose. And then God goes on to say that should either of these men, particularly now the moon, the Katan, the younger of the two Meor, be withdrawn, cease to do this job, yield, that it's all over. The earth is gone. Israel ceases to exist. That's what Satan also recognizes. That means God doesn't have a plan B. He's all in with now his Khatan Mayor, his younger luminary, who, isn't working alone and who's here to support the greater of the two luminaries, the Gadol. And, has a track record. He's been doing this not only for 25 years this time, but has been working with Yahweh constructively in support, particularly of the soul that is Dode, for 6,000 years, beginning with Chinook. And there were two of him, Chinook 1, Chinook 2, both same man. Same soul, different body. Same name, same purpose. Support Dode. So you'd think that you read something like this, and one of the most powerful prophecies in the world, yet somebody would scrape their head and say, good God, we better figure out who this guy is and make certain that we don't thwart what he's doing, because that would be really bad. And yet they do. They are. I read the other day that Mark Zuckerberg, was over the largest of these social media universes with his various channels and platforms, that he's meeting with the likes of the scoundrels, Candace Owens and Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson. I mean, just anti-Semitic trash influencers that are mental midgets, grossly immoral. And it's, of course, because, he wants to tap into the fact that they've struck a chord with similarly minded or opinionated people. And yet on all of these platforms, the algorithms trash us and nothing to do with us. It's the way the world is. It's all working against what we're trying to achieve. And yet what God's looking for is someone that says, I don't really give a damn. I don't really like being exposed to the trash that is Facebook or X or even YouTube. We'll use them as means of transferring information in a usable way to yada.com. But the home for Yahweh's name, the library for God, is yada.com. Yada.com, yada.com. That's our home. That's what we're building. And there, we're not going to relent. That's what God has asked of us. That's what we're committed to doing. So they choke. This is essential to mankind's survival. The choke represent more than written prescriptions for living that have been chiseled into stone, because the choke includes specific inscribed decrees that must be acknowledged for humans to approach God. And as such, we have returned to the Mayor, those foretold on the fourth day, serving as willing participants in the Moedim, Pesach, Matzah, Bakurim, Shavua, Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukkah. Fulfilling them, of course, is no easy task. Without Obed-Edom and Ethan's intervention with Dode, 3,000 years ago, the king would not have been positioned to fulfill the first three, Mikre and 33 CE. So sometimes we have to collaborate to get it done. Dode wouldn't have recognized his role and would not have been trusted to fulfill it, even if he had, without the support of the lesser, younger luminary and his wife, who would eventually become Dode's mother. But that's just the beginning of the challenge. Yahweh knew that Dode would need quality parenting to support to accept and endure the incredible ordeal that's associated with his calling, especially when reborn into the role of fulfilling Pesach and Matzah, being crucified and his soul going into hell. And the hardest job of all is returning to be the leader of God's people, who are typically irascible. Can't be done without support. Moshe said, God, you might as well just kill me. You can't do this job. And it's true, you can't do it without support. And on it goes, beginning 6,000 years ago and continuing another 1,000 years beyond this. That it takes that much time before Israel is fully transformed and safe. Yahweh is explaining the Torah's first prophecy, reminding us of just how essential it would be to fulfill it, and then to enable the promises of the Moedim so that they are enabled correctly and kept on schedule. That's why God keeps on working with the same souls, the ones that he's come to trust. This way he can be assured that it all works out according to plan. And collectively, they are the lone means to approach God. And so confident is Yahweh in the souls that he has selected, tested, and redeployed over the ages, and assured that they will be able to see all this through. He taunts the rest of humankind. God is saying, in essence, I'm all in with my plan and my people, and that they're going to provide the answer to mankind's most probing question. Why are we here? While the rest of you combined can't even figure out where here is or why here exists. God's literally all in with this plan. And yet heretofore, no one even knew it existed, who the players were, or why God was redeploying them. But now you do. And this is the rest of the story. So I bid you adieu from our perch here above the Caribbean Sea. That's lovely Buck Island that is being panned in the distance, Green Key Marina, which is where Kara floats, the ship that brought us here some 8 years ago. It is a great pleasure to be able to share this marvelous gift with you and to bring you these programs, reintroducing God's people to Yahweh's name and to the resume of his beloved Son. Thank you for listening. Good day.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch Yao on our next podcast.